The morning alarm buzzed through the Mars Colony Command Center, but Dr. Kang Tae-ho was already awake. He had been staring at the strange signal for 3 hours now, watching the patterns repeat themselves across his computer screen. The signal came from deep space, far beyond anything humans had ever sent out there. Tae-ho rubbed his tired eyes and took another sip of his coffee. The red dust of Mars covered everything in the colony, even finding its way into the sealed command center. He had been working on Mars for 2 years now, helping to establish humanity's first permanent colony on another planet. It was supposed to be the greatest achievement in human history. But this signal made everything else seem small. The signal was not random noise from space. It had patterns, structure, meaning. Someone or something was trying to talk to them. Dr. Park So-min walked into the command center, carrying her own cup of coffee and looking just as tired as Tae-ho felt. She was the best language expert Earth had ever produced, able to speak 12 human languages and understand the patterns behind dozens more. The colony had brought her to Mars to help with communication protocols for the growing settlement. Still working on that signal? So-min asked, sitting down at the computer next to his. I cannot figure it out, Tae-ho said. Look at this part here. The signal repeats the same pattern every 47 minutes, but each time it changes slightly. Like someone is trying different ways to say the same thing. So-min leaned closer to the screen. Her eyes grew wide as she studied the patterns. Tae-ho, this is not just a signal. This is a message, and whoever sent it knows about human languages. What do you mean? So-min pointed to different sections of the data. See these patterns here? They match the basic structure of English. But this section here follows Korean grammar rules, and this part uses Chinese character formation patterns. Someone out there knows how humans communicate. Tae-ho felt his heart start beating faster. That is impossible. We have never sent detailed language information into deep space. Then whoever sent this has been watching us for a long time, So-min said quietly. They worked together for the next 6 hours, slowly breaking down the message piece by piece. The more they discovered, the more impossible it seemed. The message was addressed specifically to Earth's government leaders. It contained information about human technology that should have been secret. Most surprising of all, it contained a formal invitation. An invitation to what? Tae-ho asked. So-min stared at the translated text on her screen. To join something called the Galactic Council, a group of 847 different species from across 3 galaxies. Back on Earth, President Lee Da-eun sat in the emergency meeting room deep beneath the White House. The room was filled with the most important people in human government and science. Everyone looked confused and worried. Admiral Kim Jin-woo stood at the front of the room, pointing to images on a large screen. The message came through our deep space monitoring station on Mars. Our best experts have confirmed it is real. Someone out there wants to talk to us. Dr. Choi Min-ho, Earth's leading physics expert, raised his hand. The technology required to send this message is beyond anything we understand. The signal traveled faster than light somehow. Our physics says that should be impossible. Maybe our physics is wrong, said Dr. Yang Soo-jin, the head of Earth's space program. If there really are 800 other intelligent species out there, they probably know things we have not learned yet. President Lee looked at the translated message on her tablet. The words seemed simple enough, but the meaning was huge. They want us to send representatives to meet with them. They say Earth has reached the level needed to join their council. What level is that? Asked General Park Hyun-soo. The message mentions 3 requirements, said Admiral Kim, reading from his notes. First, we must have developed faster-than-light travel capability. Second, we must prove we have peaceful intentions toward other species. Third, we must demonstrate something called the catalyst factor. What is the catalyst factor? President Lee asked. That part of the message would not translate, said Admiral Kim. Our language experts say it is like the alien computers cannot find the right human words for that concept. Dr. Choi stood up and walked to the front of the room. There is something else we need to consider. The message contains detailed information about our technology, our population, even our recent space missions. Someone has been watching Earth for a very long time. The room fell silent as everyone thought about what that meant. They were not alone in the universe. They had never been alone. And now, after thousands of years of human history, someone wanted them to join a galactic community. How do we know this is not some kind of trick? Asked General Park. What if these aliens want to invade Earth? What if this is how they test our defenses? Admiral Kim nodded. That is a fair concern. But the message contains technology specifications that are centuries ahead of our current abilities. If they wanted to invade Earth, they would not need to trick us first. President Lee looked around the room at all the worried faces. What do our experts think we should do? Dr. Yang spoke first. From a scientific perspective, this is the greatest opportunity in human history. We could learn technology that would advance our civilization by thousands of years. From a military perspective, said General Park, this could be the greatest threat humanity has ever faced. We know nothing about these aliens or their real intentions. Dr. Choi added, the message suggests they have been watching us develop for decades, maybe centuries. If they meant us harm, they could have acted long ago when we were much weaker. President Lee studied the message again. At the bottom was a simple instruction. Send your answer to the same coordinates within 30 Earth days. Include representatives authorized to speak for your species. The message says we have 30 days to respond, she said. I think we need to learn more before we make this decision. Admiral Kim, I want you to work with our best scientists to analyze every part of this message. Look for any clues about who sent it and what they really want. What if we decide to accept their invitation? Asked Dr. Yang. Then we will need to choose representatives very carefully, President Lee replied. People who can speak for all of humanity, not just one nation or group. As the meeting ended, everyone filed out of the room with serious expressions. They all understood that this decision would change human history forever. Either humanity would join a vast galactic community and learn wonders beyond imagination, or they would face threats they could not even understand yet. That night, President Lee stood in her office looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, 847 different species were living their lives, building their civilizations, facing their own challenges. And they wanted humanity to join them. But why now? What had humans done recently that made these aliens think Earth was ready? And what was this mysterious catalyst factor that would not translate into human language? The president knew that in 30 days, she would have to give an answer that would determine the future of the human race. She just hoped they would choose correctly. On Mars, Dr. Kang Tae-ho and Dr. Park So-min continued studying the message, searching for clues they might have missed. Deep in the signal's complex patterns, they found something that made them both stop and stare. Hidden in the mathematical structure of the message was another message, much shorter and simpler. It contained just 3 words in perfect Korean: "We are waiting." 3 weeks after the first message, the aliens came to visit. Captain Nam Soo-jin was working her shift on the International Space Station 2 when her instruments started showing impossible readings. She had been monitoring Earth's orbital space for 5 years, watching for space debris and tracking satellites. She had never seen anything like this. "Control, this is ISS-2, she spoke into her radio. "I am seeing 3 large objects approaching from the outer solar system. They are moving faster than anything we have ever built." The voice of Mission Control crackled back through her headset. "ISS-2, we confirm your readings. The objects appear to be artificial structures. They are not following normal physics." Nam watched through the station's main window as 3 ships approached Earth. The ships were beautiful and strange, looking more like flowing metal sculptures than anything humans had built. They moved through space without any visible engines, bending the light around them in ways that hurt to look at directly. The largest ship was about the size of a small city. It looked like it was made of living crystal that changed colors as Nam watched. The second ship appeared to be made entirely of water held together by some invisible force. The third ship was the strangest of all. It looked almost exactly like the space stations humans built, but cleaner and more advanced. Dr. Oh Young-soo sat in the emergency command center on Earth, watching the alien ships through telescopes and radar. As Earth's top expert on human psychology, he had been asked to help understand what the aliens might be thinking and feeling. "They stopped just outside our moon's orbit," reported the technician next to him. "They are not approaching Earth directly." "That suggests they do not want to seem threatening," Dr. O said. "They are showing respect for our space and waiting for permission to come closer." President Lee sat at her desk, staring at the phone that would connect her directly to the alien ships. The technology to make that phone call had been delivered by a small probe that morning. The probe had simply appeared next to ISS-2, uploaded the communication technology, and then disappeared. She picked up the phone and pressed the button. "This is President Lee Da-yun of Earth," she said in English. "We received your message and we welcome you to our solar system." The response came immediately in perfect Korean. "Greetings, President Lee. I am Ambassador Vextar of the Christek Dominion. We are honored to meet humanity at last." The voice was strange, like music made of crystal sounds, but somehow easy to understand. President Lee felt her hands shaking slightly. "We would like to arrange a formal meeting," she said. "Our space station can accommodate a small delegation." "We will send 3 representatives," the voice replied. "However, we must tell you that one of our delegation will be quite familiar to you." 24 hours later, Captain Nam watched a small shuttle approach ISS-2. The shuttle looked like it was made of the same flowing metal as the larger ships, but it was sized perfectly for the station's docking bay. The docking process was smoother than anything Nam had ever experienced. The alien shuttle connected to the station without any of the usual bumping or adjustment that happened when human ships docked. Nam waited in the main meeting room with Dr. An Jae-sung, a military historian who had been sent up from Earth specifically for this meeting. They had both been chosen because they were calm under pressure and good at reading people's intentions. The airlock opened and 3 figures stepped through. The first was clearly not human. It stood about 7 feet tall and appeared to be made of living crystal. Light moved through its body in patterns that seemed to match its speech. This had to be Ambassador Vextar. The second figure was even stranger. It looked like a person-shaped collection of water that somehow held together and moved like it had bones and muscles. When it spoke, the sound came from everywhere and nowhere at once. But the third figure made Nam and Dr. An stare in shock. It was a human, a young Korean man who looked to be in his 30s, wearing clothes that seemed normal except for the way they shimmered slightly in the light. "Greetings," said the crystal being in its musical voice. "I am Ambassador Vextar. This is Flotilla Commander Zurman of the Depths Federation." The water creature moved in what might have been a bow. The human stepped forward and smiled. "And I am Yoon Hae-jin. I suppose I should explain." Dr. An found his voice first. "You are human. How is that possible?" Hae-jin nodded. "I am human, but not from your Earth. I come from what you might call a parallel version of your world. My Earth joined the Galactic Council 300 years ago." Nam felt like her brain was trying to process too much information at once. "There are other Earths?" "Many," said Hae-jin. "The universe is much larger and stranger than your scientists currently understand. But that is not why we are here today." Ambassador Vextar's crystal body flashed brighter. "We have come to formally evaluate humanity for membership in the Galactic Council. This process usually takes several months." "What does the evaluation involve?" asked Dr. An Flotilla. Commander Zurman spoke for the first time, its voice like the sound of ocean waves. "We must understand your technology, your culture, and your intentions toward other species. We must also determine if your species possesses the catalyst factor." "What exactly is the catalyst factor?" Nam asked. The 3 aliens looked at each other. Even through their very different appearances, Nam could see they were having some kind of silent conversation. Hae-jin finally spoke. "That is complicated to explain. Let me ask you something instead. In your history, how long did it take your species to develop faster than light travel after you first split the atom?" Dr. An thought for a moment. "About 127 years. The 3 aliens went very still. Ambassador Vextar's crystal body stopped flashing. Zurman's water form seemed to freeze in place. "That is what we were afraid of," Hae-jin said quietly. "Is that bad?" Nam asked. "Most species take between 500 and 2,000 years to make that same technological leap," Hae-jin explained. "Your species develops technology at a rate that frightens most of the galaxy." "Frightens them how?" Dr. An asked. Ambassador Vextar's voice became more serious. "In our experience, species that develop technology too quickly often become unstable. They either destroy themselves or become threats to other species." Zurman added, "However, your species has also developed something most others do not possess. Your entertainment media, particularly your stories about alien contact, show a level of creativity and tactical thinking that is unusual." Nam felt confused. "You have been watching our movies?" "We have been monitoring your broadcasts for decades," Hae-jin admitted. The Council always observes potential member species for at least 50 years before making contact. What did you learn from watching us? Dr. An asked. The three aliens exchanged glances again. This time, Heijin looked worried. We learned that humanity always assumes aliens will be hostile, he said. In almost every story you tell, the aliens are invaders who must be fought and defeated. Your species thinks about conflict in ways that most council members find disturbing. But we also learned, added Ambassador Vextar, that humanity has an unusual ability to find solutions to impossible problems. Your stories show humans defeating superior enemies through creativity and determination. Nam was starting to understand. You're trying to figure out if we are dangerous or useful. We are trying to figure out if you are both, Zermon said. Because the galaxy has a problem that might require both qualities. Dr. An leaned forward. What kind of problem? The three aliens were quiet for a long moment. Finally, Heijin spoke. There is something out there in the dark between galaxies. Something that has been destroying entire star systems for the past 1,000 years. The Council's normal methods of dealing with threats have not worked against this enemy. What kind of enemy? Nam asked. We call them the Devourers, Ambassador Vextar said, its crystal body dimming. They do not communicate. They do not negotiate. They simply consume everything in their path and use it to build more of themselves. Zurmon's watery form rippled with what might have been fear. The Council believes that humanity's unusual approach to problems might be the key to stopping them. But first, we must be certain that humanity will not become an even greater threat than the Devourers. Nam looked at Dr. An and saw her own thoughts reflected in his expression. Humanity was being invited to join a galactic community, not just as members but as potential saviors. The question was whether the galaxy could trust them with that responsibility, and whether humanity was ready for what that might mean. The evaluation of humanity began 3 days after the first meeting. Council Assessor Quindal arrived in a ship that seemed to be made of pure light. When it materialized on ISS-2, it appeared as a shifting column of golden energy that spoke without a mouth and saw without eyes. Dr. An Jae-sung had been chosen to present human military history to the Council. He sat in the station's main conference room surrounded by holographic displays that showed Earth's conflicts throughout history. Quindal floated nearby, occasionally pulsing brighter when something interested it. Explain to me this concept you call total war, Quindal said, its voice sounding like electricity given speech. Dr. An pulled up images from World War II. Total war means using all of a nation's resources to fight. Not just soldiers, but civilians, factories, food production, everything becomes part of the war effort. Quindal's light flickered rapidly. Most species limit their conflicts to specific areas and specific combatants. Why do humans involve their entire population? Because sometimes the threat is so great that half measures will not work, Dr. An explained. When facing an enemy that wants to destroy your entire way of life, you must be willing to risk everything to stop them. Show me what you call guerrilla tactics, Quindal requested. Dr. An displayed examples from various human conflicts. Guerrilla warfare involves using small, fast-moving forces to attack larger enemies. The key is to strike quickly and then disappear before the enemy can respond. This seems inefficient, Quindal observed. Why not simply build larger armies? Because sometimes you do not have larger armies available, Dr. An said. Guerrilla tactics allow weaker forces to defeat stronger ones by being smarter, not stronger. Quindal was quiet for a long moment. When it spoke again, its voice sounded troubled. Your species fights in ways that most council members would consider unethical. What do you mean? Most civilized species have rules for warfare. Certain targets are off limits. Certain tactics are forbidden. Your species seems to believe that if something works, it is acceptable to use. Dr. An thought carefully about how to respond. Humans believe that some things are worth fighting for, even if the fight is difficult or dangerous. We do not like war, but when we must fight, we fight to win. On Earth, engineer Seo Kyung-mi was demonstrating human technology to a group of council representatives. They stood in her laboratory in Seoul, watching her work on a prototype faster-than-light engine. The council engineers looked confused as Seo worked. She used tools that seemed too simple for the complex machinery she was building. Sometimes she would hit components with a hammer when they did not fit properly. Other times she would attach parts in ways that made no sense according to the blueprints. Why do you modify the design as you build? Asked engineer Zaltron, a tall alien with 4 arms and skin like metal. "Do your plans not work correctly?" Sio laughed. "The plans work fine, but real materials are not perfect like the plans assume. Sometimes you have to adjust things to make them work in the real world." She picked up a component that was slightly too large for its intended space and began filing it down by hand. The alien engineers watched in horror. "You are damaging the precision of the part," protested Engineer Morvan, whose tentacles writhed with distress. "This will affect the performance of the entire system." "It will affect it by making it actually work," Sio replied, continuing to file. Sometimes perfect engineering is the enemy of working engineering. She installed the modified component and activated the engine. It hummed to life perfectly, creating a small faster-than-light field that made the air shimmer. The alien engineers checked their instruments, then checked them again. The engine was working at 112% of its theoretical efficiency. "How is this possible?" Zaltron asked. Sio shrugged. "Human engineering is not just about following plans. It is about making things work, even when they should not." Meanwhile, in a military training facility in Colorado, Private Han Dong-hyun was facing what the council called the impossible scenario. It was a tactical simulation that had been used to test military commanders throughout the galaxy for over 3 centuries. No one had ever solved it in less than 4 hours. The scenario was simple in concept but brutal in execution. A small force had to defend a position against an enemy that was larger, better equipped, and had superior technology. The defending force had limited ammunition, no possibility of retreat, and no hope of reinforcement. Most council military leaders approached the problem by calculating optimal defensive positions, rationing ammunition carefully, and attempting to hold out as long as possible before the inevitable defeat. Han looked at the scenario for exactly 14 minutes, then submitted his solution. Admiral Baek Ji-hoon, who was observing the test, stared at Han's plan in disbelief. "Private, this strategy involves deliberately abandoning the position you are supposed to defend." "Yes, sir," Han replied calmly. "The scenario says I have to defend the position, but it does not say I have to defend it from that position." Han's plan involved using the position as bait. He would place a small force there to make the enemy think that was where the real defense was happening. Meanwhile, the majority of his forces would attack the enemy from behind, while they were focused on the supposedly defended position. The council military observers ran the simulation. Han's strategy resulted in complete victory with minimal casualties. "This is not how warfare is supposed to work," protested General Kexmoral, a reptilian alien with scales that changed color based on emotion. His scales were currently a deep purple that indicated confusion and distress. "Why not?" Han asked. Because you are supposed to defend the position, not abandon it," Kexmoral replied. "But I did defend it," Han pointed out. "At the end of the simulation, I controlled the position and the enemy was defeated." "Is that not successful defense?" Admiral Baek smiled proudly. "Private Han, you just solved a problem that has stumped the galaxy's best military minds for 300 years. Back on ISS-2, Yoon Hae-jin was reviewing the evaluation reports with the other council representatives. The results were unlike anything they had ever seen. "Human military thinking is completely outside normal parameters," reported Quindal. "They do not follow standard tactical doctrine. They seem to make up new strategies as they fight. Their engineering capabilities are equally unusual," added Engineer Zaltron. "They build machines that work better than the mathematics say they should. I do not understand how this is possible." Flotilla Commander Zurmon's watery form rippled with concern. "Perhaps most troubling, they do not seem to recognize the concept of impossible problems. When faced with scenarios that should have no solution, they simply find one anyway." Ambassador Vextar's crystal body flashed thoughtfully. "The question is whether these traits make them useful allies or dangerous enemies." Hae-jin looked at the reports and felt a familiar mix of pride and worry. His own Earth had gone through this same evaluation process 3 centuries ago, and the results had been almost identical. "There is something else we need to consider," he said. "The speed of their technological development is accelerating. In the 50 years since we began monitoring this Earth, they have advanced faster than most species do in 500 years. "What does that mean for the Council?" asked Quindal. "It means that if we do not accept them as allies soon, they may become too powerful to accept at all. Heijin replied. My Earth learned that lesson. Isolation only makes human development more unpredictable. Ambassador Vexitar turned to face Earth through the station's window. Somewhere down there, 8 billion humans were going about their daily lives, unaware that their entire future was being decided by aliens in orbit above them. The Council must vote soon, Vexitar said. The Devourers have been detected moving toward this galaxy cluster. We estimate they will arrive within 10 Earth years. And if the Council decides humanity is too dangerous to accept? Asked Zurmon. The station fell silent. Everyone knew the answer to that question, but no one wanted to say it out loud. If humanity was rejected by the Council, they would face the Devourers alone. And based on everything the Council had learned about human nature, they would probably try to fight anyway. The question was whether that would be the galaxy's salvation or its final mistake. Admiral Baek Ji-hoon sat in the deepest, secure bunker beneath the Pentagon, staring at classified information that made his 25 years of military experience feel useless. The Council had finally shared the truth about their enemy, and it was worse than anything humanity had ever imagined. The holographic display showed a three-dimensional map of 3 galaxy clusters. Red zones marked areas where the Devourers had already struck. Baek counted 47 star systems that no longer existed. Billions of lives had been consumed to feed an enemy that seemed to grow stronger with every victory. The Devourers appeared approximately 1,000 Earth years ago, explained Ambassador Vexitar, its crystal body dim with what might have been grief. They emerged from the space between galaxies with technology that surpasses even our most advanced civilizations. Dr. Lim Ye-jin, Earth's top strategic analyst, studied the attack patterns on the display. Show me how the Council has been fighting them. The display changed to show Council fleet formations. Baek immediately saw the problem. The formations were beautiful, orderly, and completely predictable. Council military doctrine prioritizes preservation of life above all else, explained General Kexmoral, his scale shifting to a somber gray color. Our strategies focus on evacuating civilians and minimizing casualties among our forces. What about victory? Asked Admiral Baek. The alien general's scales flickered with confusion. Victory is important, but not if it costs too many lives. Dr. Lim leaned forward. How many Council ships have you lost in these battles? As few as possible, replied Flotilla Commander Zurmon. Our commanders are trained to retreat when casualties exceed 5%. Admiral Baek stared at the aliens in disbelief. You retreat when you lose 5% of your forces? Of course, said General Kexmoral. No tactical objective is worth losing more than 5% of our military assets. That explains why you keep losing, Dr. Lim said quietly. The room fell silent. Ambassador Vexitar's crystal body flashed with what might have been offense. Our military doctrine has maintained peace in the galaxy for 3,000 years, Vexitar said coldly. And now something has appeared that your peaceful doctrine cannot defeat, Admiral Baek replied. Show me detailed battle records. For the next 6 hours, the Council representatives shared classified recordings of their encounters with the Devourers. Baek and Dr. Lim watched in growing horror as they saw the same pattern repeat over and over. The Council would detect Devourer forces approaching a star system. They would send a fleet to evacuate civilians while engaging the enemy defensively. The Devourers would adapt to Council tactics within hours. The Council would retreat to preserve their forces. The Devourers would consume the entire system and move on. They learn from every battle, observed Dr. Lim. By the 3rd or 4th engagement, they can predict your moves perfectly. Which is why we need humanity's help, admitted Yoon Hae-jin. Your species thinks about warfare in ways that might confuse them. Commander Ryu Hyunwoo had been listening quietly throughout the briefing. Now he stood and walked to the tactical display. Show me the Devourer ships, he said. The display revealed vessels that hurt to look at directly. They seemed to shift and change shape constantly, as if they could not decide what form would be most effective. Some looked like geometric nightmares of dark metal and energy. Others resembled massive biological organisms with technology grafted onto their bodies. They adapt their ship designs based on what they encounter, explained General Kexmoral. If we use energy weapons, they develop better shields. If we use kinetic weapons, they develop stronger armor. Commander Ryu studied the images for several minutes. Then he began to smile in a way that made the alien representatives look nervous. I have an idea, he said, but you are not going to like it. What is your idea? Asked Ambassador Vextar. We fight them using tactics that are deliberately bad, Ryu explained. Strategies that make no sense. Attacks that should fail. If they adapt to logical warfare, we give them illogical warfare. The alien representatives looked at each other with obvious concern. General Kexmoral's scale shifted to a bright orange that indicated alarm. That could result in massive casualties, Kexmoral protested. It could also result in victory, Admiral Beck replied. And sometimes victory requires accepting losses that peacetime thinking cannot accept. Meanwhile, in the Council's emergency session chamber aboard their largest ship, representatives from across the galaxy were debating humanity's fate. The chamber was a massive sphere that allowed delegates to float in three-dimensional space, speaking in hundreds of different languages that were automatically translated. The debate had been raging for 18 hours. Humanity represents everything. We have work to move beyond, declared Speaker Colmus of the Serenity Collective, its gas-form body glowing with agitation. They glorify violence and solve problems through destruction. But they solve problems that we cannot solve at all, replied Counselor Gentar of the Logic Masters, its mechanical voice cutting through the noise. Their unconventional thinking might be exactly what we need. We have already lost 3 member worlds while debating this issue, added Representative Morkala of the Voidwalkers, its shadow form shifting with frustration. The Devourers do not pause their advance while we discuss philosophy. The debate continued, but Yoon Haijin could see that opinion was slowly shifting toward acceptance. Fear of the Devourers was finally overcoming fear of humanity. But there was something else troubling him. Something the Council had not told Earth's representatives yet. During a break in the debate, Haijin spoke privately with Ambassador Vextar. We need to tell them about the Lost Worlds, he said. Vextar's crystal body dimmed. That information is classified. It would cause panic among the member species. It would also help them understand why we need humanity so desperately, Haijin replied. What Lost Worlds? The voice came from behind them. They turned to see Dr. Lim Ye-jin standing in the corridor, having apparently overheard their conversation. Vextar and Haijin looked at each other. Finally, Haijin sighed. 3 council member worlds have already fallen to the Devourers, he admitted, not just attacked. Completely consumed. Every living thing converted into Devourer technology. Dr. Lim felt her blood turn cold. How many people? Approximately 12 billion sentient beings, Vextar replied quietly. When did this happen? The most recent attack was 6 months ago. We managed to keep it secret to prevent panic. Dr. Lim stared at them in shock. You are facing extinction and you are worried about preventing panic? Council policy requires, Vextar began. Council policy is failing, Dr. Lim interrupted. Your people are dying while you debate procedures. She turned and walked quickly back toward the human delegation. There were things Admiral Beck needed to know immediately. That night, the council vote was finally held. The result was closer than anyone had expected. 423 votes in favor of accepting humanity. 421 votes against, with 3 abstentions. Humanity was now officially a member of the Galactic Council, with all the rights and responsibilities that entailed. But as Yoon Haijin watched Earth's representatives celebrate their acceptance, he could not shake the feeling that they had just signed humanity up for a war they might not be able to win. The Devourers were already moving toward this galaxy cluster. Long-range sensors showed their advance fleet would arrive within 8 Earth years. For the first time in 1,000 years, the galaxy had hope that someone might be able to stop them. The question was whether humanity could develop a solution before time ran out. 8 years passed faster than anyone expected. Admiral Song Min-jun stood on the bridge of the Earth battleship Incheon, watching the largest fleet in galactic history prepare for battle. 12,000 council ships surrounded him in perfect formation, their various technologies creating a light show that would have been beautiful under different circumstances. The enemy had finally arrived. Through the main viewer, Song could see the Devourer swarm approaching the Kepler 442 system. There were so many enemy ships that they blocked out the stars behind them. They moved like a living thing, flowing through space in patterns that seemed random but somehow coordinated. Enemy fleet size unknown, reported Commander Park Yun-soo from the tactical station. Our computers cannot count them. They keep shifting and merging and splitting apart. Song nodded grimly. The Devourers had learned much in their 1,000-year campaign across the galaxies. They no longer built individual ships. Instead, they created massive swarms of smaller units that could combine into larger vessels when needed, then separate again to confuse enemy targeting systems. Status report from the Council fleet? Song asked. All ships report ready for battle, replied Lieutenant Kim Dobbin. Admiral Vorthak is requesting permission to begin standard defensive formation. Song looked at the tactical display showing the Council's planned battle formation. It was a thing of beauty, with each ship positioned for maximum defensive efficiency and minimum risk of casualties. It was also exactly what the Devourers would expect. Tell Admiral Vorthak to wait for my signal, Song said, and prepare to implement Plan Chaos. Commander Park turned to stare at him. Sir, the Council representatives are still protesting that plan. They say it violates every principle of civilized warfare. That is exactly why it might work, Song replied. Plan Chaos was the result of 8 years of human tactical development, refined through countless simulations and war games. It was based on a simple principle. If the enemy adapted to logical strategies, humanity would give them the most illogical strategy possible. The plan involved using damaged ships as weapons, deliberately creating vulnerable formations that were actually traps, and coordinating attacks through what appeared to be complete disorder. Most importantly, it required accepting casualties that would make any Council commander retreat immediately. On the Council flagship, Admiral Vorthak was arguing with his staff of advisors. The reptilian commander's scales had turned a deep purple that indicated extreme stress. The human plan is madness, declared General Kexmoral. They want us to use our own ships as projectiles. They want us to deliberately expose our weaknesses to enemy fire. But their simulations show a 70% chance of victory, added Counselor Gentar, its mechanical voice cutting through the debate. Our conventional strategies show a 12% chance. Simulations are not reality, Vorthak replied. When real beings start dying, humans might not be as willing to accept losses as they claim. Through the communication system, Admiral Song's voice reached the Council flagship. Admiral Vorthak, this is Admiral Song. The enemy fleet has entered weapons range. I am implementing Plan Chaos in 30 seconds, with or without Council participation. Vorthak looked at his tactical display. The Devourer swarm was arranging itself into a formation designed to counter the Council's expected defensive strategy. They had done this hundreds of times before against other Council fleets. Admiral Song, Vorthak said reluctantly, Council forces will follow your lead. Acknowledged, Song replied. All ships begin random maneuvering. Make it look like we do not know what we are doing. Across the vast fleet, thousands of ships suddenly broke formation. To any outside observer, it looked like complete chaos. Ships scattered in all directions, some appearing to flee while others charged directly at the enemy with no coordination. The Devourer swarm paused, clearly confused by what they were seeing. Their adaptation algorithms were designed to counter organized military tactics, not apparent pandemonium. Pilot John Hyo-Rin led a squadron of fighters in what looked like a panicked retreat toward the Council's main battle line. Behind her, Devourer pursuit craft followed, thinking they were chasing fleeing enemies. All fighters, execute Maneuver 7, Hyo-Rin commanded. Her squadron suddenly reversed direction and flew straight through the Council fleet's formation, firing at the pursuing Devourers. The enemy ships, caught completely off guard, flew directly into the crossfire from the larger Council vessels. The maneuver violated every rule of space combat. Fighters were never supposed to fire while friendly ships were in their line of sight. The risk of hitting their own forces was enormous. But human pilots had trained for 8 years to make these impossible shots. They threaded beams of energy between their own ships with precision that made the alien observers question their understanding of physics. On the battleship Incheon, engineer Seo Kyung-mi was implementing the most controversial part of Plan Chaos. She had deliberately damaged the ship's main reactor, causing it to leak energy in patterns that looked like critical system failures. Council ships are requesting permission to assist us, reported Commander Park. They think we are about to explode. Perfect, Song replied. Let them think that. The Devourer swarm detected what appeared to be a crippled human ship leaking dangerous energy. Their algorithms identified it as a low-priority target that would probably destroy itself soon anyway. They were wrong. SEO had turned the engine into a massive directed energy weapon. The system failures were actually a way to channel the entire ship's power output into a single devastating beam. Firing main weapon, SEO announced. The engine seemed to explode, but instead of destroying the ship, the explosion became a lance of pure energy that cut through the Devourer swarm like a sword through cloth. Hundreds of enemy vessels simply ceased to exist. The Devourers tried to adapt, spreading their formation to reduce the effectiveness of such attacks. But as soon as they did, Admiral Song implemented Phase 2 of Plan Chaos. All damaged ships. Begin kamikaze runs, he ordered, across the battlefield. Council vessels that had taken heavy damage suddenly accelerated toward the enemy at maximum speed. Their crews had been evacuated to other ships, leaving only automated systems to guide them on their final mission. The Devourers tried to shoot down the incoming ships, but there were too many coming from too many directions. When the ships hit, they did not just explode. Human engineers had modified their reactors to create the largest possible destructive yield. Each impact sent shockwaves through the Devourer swarm, disrupting their coordination and destroying dozens of nearby vessels. General Kexmoral watched the battle from the Council flagship, his scales shifting through colors that had no names. "This is not warfare," he said quietly. "This is controlled insanity." "And it is working," observed Councillor Gentar. The Devourer swarm was adapting as quickly as it could, but human tactics changed faster than their algorithms could process. Every time they developed a counter to one strategy, the humans would switch to something completely different. Commander Ryu Hyun-woo led a boarding action that no sane military commander would have approved. His forces used small ships to ram directly into Devourer vessels, then fought hand-to-hand, combat inside enemy ships while both vessels were still shooting at each other. "This violates every principle of naval warfare," protested Admiral Vorthak over the communications channel. "Good," Ryu replied while firing his weapon at a Devourer construct. "If we followed principles, we would lose like everyone else has." The battle raged for 14 hours. By the end, the Devourer swarm had been completely destroyed. For the first time in 1,000 years, they had been defeated so thoroughly that none escaped to carry information about the battle back to their main force. The cost had been enormous by Council standards. Humanity had lost 38 ships and over 12,000 people. The Council had lost 67 ships and 15,000 people. By human standards, it was an overwhelming victory achieved at an acceptable cost. Admiral Song stood in the silent aftermath, looking at the debris field that had once been the greatest threat the galaxy had ever known. Around him, Council ships were already beginning rescue operations, searching for survivors with an efficiency born of long practice. "Admiral Song," came Admiral Vorthak's voice over the communication system. "I owe you an apology. Your tactics were effective. They were necessary," Song replied. "The Devourers could not be defeated by following the rules, so we changed the rules." In the months that followed, the victory at Kepler 442 became legendary throughout the galaxy. For the first time in a millennium, the Devourers had been stopped. But more importantly, the galaxy had learned something new about warfare. Sometimes the best strategy was the one that made no sense to anyone, including your own forces. Earth established the first interspecies military academy, where human instructors taught alien officers the principles of adaptive chaos theory. The classes were popular, though many students required psychological counseling to cope with human tactical thinking. Admiral Song received the Council's highest military honor, though he noted that the ceremony was much more formal and much less fun than human celebrations. And in the deep reaches of space, the main Devourer force detected the destruction of their advanced fleet.